in 1970, there was a movie that was released called Love Story. I hated the movie. I just never saw why people got so wrapped up in it. But there was a famous line from the movie. Love means never having to say you're sorry. Now, I think that if somebody were to write a book, make a movie out of the story of progressives today, there would be a comparable line. That means loving progressivism means never having to say you're sorry. Because progressives never accept accountability, never accept the fact that their policies fail, and never accept blame for anything that's gone wrong in anything that they run. It's always somebody else's fault. We're told that there are racial problems in this country, and I don't think anybody would doubt that. But we're told by progressives, by Democrats, that these racial problems are much deeper, that they fall into the categories that I have developed a new acronym for, ISSI, I-S-S-I. And those forms of racism are institutional, structural, systemic, and my favorite, invisible. Now, of course, different people tell you we have different kinds of racial problems. One of the ISSI group, some say it's all four, but it's very hard to pin people down on this. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that not only do we have racial issues in this country, but we have these other structural, systemic, institutional, invisible racism issues. Accept that for the sake of argument. That should lead to two questions. Is one, who's responsible for that? Who should be held accountable for that? And then the second question is, whom should we trust to try to fix that? Whom should we trust to try to fix that? So let's look at these two questions. Now, we can't look at the whole country here. So what I want to do in this video is to look at three cities. Minneapolis, in the sense where this began with the murder of George Floyd. Philadelphia, because that's where I grew up and was born. And Atlanta, which has been in the news recently since the Friday shooting of a young black man there. Now, let's look at these three cities. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Who's run that city? The last Republican mayor of Minneapolis was back in 1974. So basically, the Democrats have run the city of Minneapolis for almost a half century. So if there are all these deep, ISSI kind of problems, not just racial issues, but deep structural issues in Minnesota, whom should we hold responsible? Philadelphia, where I was born, hasn't had a Republican mayor since I was born. It might have been a couple days early on where there was a Republican mayor. I'm 68. That means Philadelphia has been run by the Democrats for almost 3/4 of a century. So if you have these ISSI kind of racial problems in Philadelphia, who bears the responsibility for that? Now let's move on to Atlanta. In the news lately, Atlanta has had mayors for 178 years. We're talking, almost 2 centuries. Of those 178 years, Republican mayors ran the city for two 1-year terms back in the 1870s, right after it ran the Reconstruction period. Other than that, it's been all Democrats or parties that are variations of a Democrat party. Almost 2 centuries they've run Atlanta. So if there are all these deep problems, racial problems in Atlanta, who's responsible? What we keep hearing from the Democrats is that the people responsible are Donald Trump, the American people who are just inherently racist, and the United States government. It's never the parties that have actually been running these places. And we know which party that is. For a half century in Minneapolis, 3/4 of a century in Philadelphia, almost 2 centuries in Atlanta. I mean, who else could be responsible for what's going on in Atlanta if not the Democrat Party? So let's move on to the second question. We have all these problems. To whom should we look to fix the problems? Whoever's created them. And what are we told? We're told that the Democratic Party is most suited to addressing and fixing these issues. The Democrat Party. The party that was the party of slavery. The party that secured and safeguarded slavery up until the very end. The Democrat Party. The party that gave us the Indian Removal Act back in the 1830s. They're going to fix it. The Democrat Party. The party that in 1861, after they lost an election, the outcome of which they didn't like, started a civil war which led to the death of 700,000 people, the equivalent of over 7 million today, given the size of our population. The Democrat Party, the party that gave us Jim Crow laws after the Civil War. The Democrat Party, the party that gave us segregation after the Civil War. The Democrat Party, the party that gave us the Ku Klux Klan as a terrorist resistance movement after the Civil War. They're going to fix it all. The Democrat Party, the party that gave us separate but equal. The Democrat Party elected a president, Woodrow Wilson, who resegregated the federal workforce in Washington. They actually, in some of the buildings, they went back to having 2 different restrooms. One's for whites and one's for blacks. Yet they're going to fix it. The Democrat president, Woodrow Wilson, who had a private showing of Birth of a Nation based on a book called The Klansman in the White House. They're going to fix it. The Democrat Party, the party that was running the country during World War II when we rounded up Japanese Americans and put them in detention centers out in the West. They're going to fix it. The Democrat Party, whose candidate in the forthcoming election is going to be Joe Biden, one of the authors of the 1994 crime bill, I should say the infamous 1994 crime bill, which did such devastation to the African American community. But they're going to fix it. Just give them power and they'll fix it. I mean, we have every reason to believe, based on their past history, that they'll fix it. We have every reason to believe, based on the fact that they've been running Minneapolis and Philadelphia and Atlanta and many other cities for a half century or 3/4 of a century or almost 2 centuries. Yeah, they're going to fix it. The fact that people, especially the media, take any of this seriously actually is beyond my comprehension. I mean, imagine if you picked up a newspaper and you read that in Germany, the Nazi Party had resurrected itself, with the same banners and everything else. They admitted that the Holocaust had been a grave error and a dark moment in German history. They apologized for it. But when it came to the Holocaust and continuing anti-Semitism in Germany, because there is still anti-Semitism in Germany, they didn't accept responsibility for it. They blamed it on their political opponents, the Social Democrats. They were responsible. Their candidate must be an anti-Semite. They blamed the German people, well, German people are inherently anti-Semitic, so don't blame us for the Holocaust. Don't blame the Nazi Party. Germany's inherently anti-Semitic, so blame Germany. Blame the people. Blame our political opponents. But don't blame us, the Nazi Party. We recognize we made a mistake. In fact, we're going to fix Germany. Just give us the power and we'll fix Germany and root out anti-Semitism, because we've had such a good record of doing that in the past. Now, if you read that story in the New York Times or Washington Post, you'd probably say, what planet am I living on? Who in the hell would believe this nonsense? Who would believe that the Germans are the best, the Nazi Party in Germany is the best party to address questions of anti-Semitism? You forgive Germany. No. You condemn Germany. You condemn the German people, but you should forgive the Nazi Party. But that's exactly what's happening in here, in the United States. We're expected to forgive the Democrat Party for all that it's done. But we're not going to forgive, they're not going to forgive the United States. It's a racist country. They're not going to forgive the American people. They're racists, a bunch of racists. But forgive the Democrat Party, the party of racism, segregation, separate but equal, Jim Crow, the KKK, you name it. Forgive them. But here, that the logic that in Germany would be considered absurd is accepted and embraced. You see it all the time. Just turn on the TV, watch anything other than Fox News and a handful of other places, and that's what you'll see. So that's why I've concluded that if you love progressivism, it means you never have to say you're sorry. No matter what your party's done, the party that you support, no matter what it's done, it's to be forgiven. It's to be forgotten. I mean, they're tearing down all these statues of Confederates. They're all Democrats. Far from, if anything, they should be looked at and viewed as a reminder of what the Democrat Party gave us. It gave us civil war. It gave us slavery. But all that's to be forgotten. Now we have these problems, these issy racial problems, and basically we're supposed to look to Joe Biden and the Democrats to fix them. The very party that has long been responsible for all of it. Not just the Civil War, which was in the past. Rounding up Japanese Americans happened my mother died last year. It was her lifetime. She was alive when that was happening. That is an ancient history. But we're supposed to forget all that. We're supposed to forgive all that. Just condemn the American people. Condemn the Republicans. Condemn Donald Trump, who's been in office a little over 3 years. It's all his fault. Condemn the United States, but don't condemn the party. Don't condemn progressives. Not only should you not condemn them, you should put Joe Biden, the father of the 1994 crime bill, and the Democrats in power and charge them with cleaning up the messes in places like Minneapolis, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. Messes that, of course, they bear no accountability for. They have no responsibility for it. I mean, all this is absurd. It's like I'm living in an Onion article that people even take this stuff seriously. But that's where we're at today. So I hope you got something out of this. If you did, give me a subscription, hit the thumbs up button, click the little bell so you get notified when I make future videos. And until the next time, I'm out of here.